Hey there.
Perfect timing. Hey there, last call of the year.
Yeah.
Gliding into 2025.
It's a pretty cool thing to do on the last day of the year, don't you think? Have these
Well,
conversations.
it's your last day of the year. It's our second.
Oh,
That's right.
That's true. I'm
The
saying,
truth is,
wow,
Jax, you're way ahead of us.
yeah,
I know, right? I don't even have to do anything. It's just natural.
I can't wait till Jack starts sharing stock tips with us because she's getting tomorrow's news, right?
Yeah. How's that
Should
not
work.
illegal, huh? You know?
Should totally work. Should totally work. Um, how is everybody toward the end of the year? Just keeping it together?
Yeah, I had a crazy week last week. We were expecting to host one gathering with my sister's family. We wound up hosting three gatherings in
Cool.
three consecutive days, or almost three consecutive days. And yeah, we had some illness on Laura's family side, and so they couldn't host. So we wound up hosting, but not everybody can make the same days. So we wound up splitting it up into two. So we had overlaps of some people all 3 days and not overlaps of others. And it wound up being interesting cleaning up from one party, 1 o'clock in the morning, you're cleaning up from a party and you're like, just clean it up. Doesn't matter. We'll put it all away tomorrow. We're like, no, we got another one tomorrow. We got to prep for that.
Did you get
So,
to see people you hadn't seen in a while?
yeah, a little bit, not much. I mean, stepdaughters, I don't know if you noticed on OGM, or I think it was OGM last week. I had the the screen open here, and my couch had been opened. My stepdaughter had was using the couch as her bedroom, and so it's always nice to see her. She's up at Washington State. She's now graduated. She's working, and uh, and so whenever she goes down, it's kind of nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the fact that she uses my office as her bedroom is extra special because then I have to wake her up.
Hello, need the space. That's great. Um, I don't have an agenda for us today. We are a little bit strewn from the holidays and other sorts of things. What is on our collective minds? And also, did we leave a topic on the table from last week?
No, but we had left the topic on the table from the week before,
Yeah, which
um,
was which?
which was thinking about how do we structure moving forward,
Yes, thank you.
and how do we actually plan things and do things in a way that's got some structure. And I suggested that I was going to work on something that I was learning from Dave Snowden.
Yeah,
I think everybody knows who Dave Snowden is. Um, and I I created something. I created a spreadsheet which I shared on a couple of weeks ago, I think on
I didn't
excuse
see
me.
it.
Yeah, on Mattermost, I think it was. But that
ah,
was such a long time ago, I don't remember either.
ages.
And I've we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but I've since uh, started thinking that it might be a little too um, complex and that we need to sort of simplify it. But the idea is to not, so really simply, Snowden basically says, let's not do projections of what we're going to do because we don't know what we're going to do and we don't know how to do it. So let's just sort of sense into it. And in order to sense into it, we need to have a directional path. And so let's not build projections of where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. And get directions and take what's the next step, right? What's the adjacent possible, and work with that, because that's easier than getting everybody on the same page of some future vision and getting everybody to know how to get there and what are the things we need to do to get there and all that kind of stuff. And so that feels very consistent to me with the way that I've learned for myself to sort of direct myself. And I thought we would maybe discuss that, see if that's a possibility.
I like that a lot. And I found your spreadsheet, which when I clicked on it, didn't actually work. So I just followed it for the first time. Apologies for that. I will paste the link in the Zoom right now for the spreadsheet you created.
It
But
doesn't,
if you want
it doesn't work.
when I clicked on it in Mattermost, I got just a /
Oh,
colon
yeah,
URL.
somehow it didn't code the URL properly.
Yeah, but if you copy the link as text and then paste it into a window, it works just fine.
Mhm.
So I just did that. But if you want to say a little more about Snowden and what you're saying, I think partly the advice is to it's this probe, sense, and respond kind of thing of try a lot of things and work our way toward a goal rather than setting up a goal and plotting key milestones and all the usual planning stuff.
All the usual work back stuff. Yeah.
Right, right.
Right. And he calls them vectors, which I've always called them directions.
Yep.
I've always said, we don't know where we're going, but we know we're going in this direction. Right. And it's kind of, I'm very physical, so I don't know exactly what I'm building sometimes, but I know I'm building in this direction, and then I'm going to keep building until it ends up whatever it ends up being.
Right.
And so action vectors or a direction are, stuff I threw up as potentials that we could look at. And so the example is, um, we want to build something for nurturing living knowledge or information curation, sort of different linguistic terms for the same concept. And that starts with the current state, whatever it is. And we then speak to that current state. We see that we're sensing that current state collectively. And then we say, well, what we need is from this current state, what we need is this thing. So what's the possible adjacent? And then what's the thing that we want to go to? Like, not a vision of what we want, but what we would like, what we desire. And then say, okay, now we've got a direction that we want to go, which is this nurturing living knowledge is a direction that we'd like to do. Here's the current state. Here's the next thing we could do. Let's go do that thing. And then let's ask some questions about what that thing is. Who, what, where, when, why. And then let's build a metric around these short-term goals, not long-term things that we get lost in, get confused by the metric, but a metric that is specific to this where we're at, what we're doing, the direction we're going, and how we can track that specific metric that relates to what we're doing, not as something secondary. And so again, I just threw out a dozen vectors there. I kind of looked at them as sort of big scale. How would we take a NeoBook and split it off into a bunch of different things? What are we doing? Obviously influenced by my perspective on this stuff. But the idea was really sort of to model the approach of this planning map rather than to actually complete it. It was simply an example set. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
Any questions, any thoughts?
I've got a few, but I'm just wondering if someone else might want to go first while I just gather them.
Take your time, but jump on it. Go ahead, Klaus.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with this here because my thought is that when you look at the dynamics in our political system right now, there is actually a convergence between what you call the MAGA, hard right groups here, and people who are more on the liberal side of things. I would call it more on the enlightened side of things. It's not really liberal if you're enlightened. It just is real. And in this discussion that took place between not enough people yesterday on symbolic capitalism, that rolled through there. I mean, I really think that most of us would be perceived as symbolic capitalists, right? Because there is a differentiation simply because by the way you think, the information you have, the education you have. It's not just material in a sense that people make more money. It's also that you understand things differently, and there's a resentment that has been built up, purposefully between people who just don't have access to the information and groups who then call them stupid or despair by the really dumb things that are happening. So I've come to think this is such an amazing opportunity, this time right now, to assist in sharing information in ways that is easy to understand, easy to process, and I just had this great example with this McKinsey report that came out, basically giving a toolbox to the industry on how to greenwash regenerative agriculture. And I tried to I really worked to make this as plain as possible. And the feedback was amazing. I mean, I've had close to 10,000 hits on this, and people responding from all directions about how they appreciated the insight. I mean, everybody using different words, but it's just to put together the logic where people intuitively already know that something is wrong here. They just can't put it in words, and they can't put the symbols all together. So I think the NeoBooks have such a great opportunity to be a tool for making things transparent, for bringing light into the discussion, and do it in ways where anybody, the language is so generic that anybody reading this gets it. You don't have to have a PhD to follow the logic of the discussion. So I think that is sort of my target for advancing, my NeoBooks. I'm on version 3 right now, just to help people understand.
Thanks, Klaus. That connects a lot to things that I'm also interested in different ways. But first, I'd love to hear from Jax.
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Klaus, and already a great start to the day, which is fantastic. So haven't been here for quite a few weeks, but I did watch the last video of so I got a bit of a sense where things were at. I might just phrase it with I have 4 weeks until I probably disappear again. So I've got a lovely little opportunity at the moment of sort of volunteering a bit of time and effort to support it however that might be. And it seems that Jose, the framework that you've raised and the sort of discussion around Snowden's work really intersects pretty well with the sort of work that I'm learning about and trying to understand. And then Klaus, especially what you were just saying too, with the aim of your work and also how that fits with the distributing living knowledge in a sort of stable way within our world. So that's the first part. Is I just want to say that over the next few weeks, I've got an opportunity really to help observe, support, and then maybe come in the last week that I'm able to be here to share some of the things that we've learned, if that's of use to this group, of course. But maybe, Jose, there's a way that we can support that. You and I might be able to do that and support whatever that is, or everybody, doesn't matter. The second part is, just while you reflect on that, I think sometimes it's a little confusing about whether we are working on the aims of us as a group or the output or the outcomes that we're wanting as a group on the world. And so I guess with the framework, and they also sit like this as well across each other. I wonder if we're looking at this, whether we're exploring our effectiveness as a group over the time. We've got so many bright brains in the room, and we've got such an opportunity, and we've got a lovely pace. There's a really lovely pace that's set up and beautifully facilitated. What is the opportunity for us to carry this over and to actualize some of this at some point up ahead? And I wonder if looking at Snowden's work and then thinking about what we entered into the conversation with at the beginning, whether your spreadsheet, Jose, or some of the other discussions that we've had are an attempt by the group to sort of bring together something that is what is the sum of all of us? What are we actually working towards? And are we able to assess ourselves as a group and then assess our concerns in the world and what we're trying to influence? Or is it that we really want to focus on what we're trying to look at in the world in terms of nurturing living knowledge? They're really my questions, I guess. And then really, how might I help as we go through over the next couple of weeks, and support what you're working towards? Yeah.
So for me, it's yes. It's both, right? I think the approach that here's what I'm feeling is missing for us. We don't have clarity about what we're doing, and we're not doing. And so I'd like to organize that to the best of our ability, so that we have a sense of direction and we have a sense of what we're doing, not in a prescriptive way, but in a way that we all can sense into it and be able to contribute, as you've just described, Jax. And so a framework like this, to me, is an opportunity to define how we see what we're doing and do it. But also, I think it informs then how the outcome of that work is created and then seen by us and others, which is why I say yes, because if we move away from prescriptive books towards an open sense of making sense of the world through knowledge, then I think it would be great to build those things with the same ethos, that we're also not building prescriptive plans for how to make it happen. And that we're also making sense of the process by which we make those things happen, both the underlying technology, and each implementation of each book, as we learn to do this, as we learn what it is and we learn to do it, that we do so through this process. That's my desire personally. And so if we can, and I agree with you, it's hard to sometimes distinguish which it is because we're a mix of folks in here. But I think that's fine as long as we can sense into whether we want to jump into the design of a map for creating NeoBooks or the design of a map for a NeoBook.
Yeah.
And I think there's two different things there, but they are overlapping one another.
And I'm interested in the intersection of those two things, so I like them both. I mean, I wish I were faster at any of this kind of stuff. But I've got a NeoBook about design from trust in the works, but also some nuggets that collect up to try to explain what is a NeoBook and how might one step into doing a NeoBook. What we don't have easily, which I think is a pretty big gap, is that because of Pete Kaminsky, the platform I'm using is Obsidian writing markdown files pushed to GitHub, but the wiki that Pete has built that way is not easily commentable, or those are not easy community objects to share and talk about, which is frustrating because the thing that would make the vision that is not about books, but about the community and the living documents come true is easier, more accessible interactivity around the documents. And that makes me think for just a second, and this is a technical digression, but it might help. Have you all heard about Whitewind?
No.
So Whitewind is a blogging platform built around the AT protocol. And that means nothing probably, except I can explain it. Blue Sky, which is the Twitter alternative created by Jack and other people who are ex-Twitter, uses a protocol called the AT protocol, which was originally the authenticated transfer protocol. All it means is it's data sovereignty, which means you get a personal data store. Everybody who starts an account gets a personal data store. That's where your stuff goes. It then gets shared out to different kinds of platforms. But your conversations are always accessible. Your data is always yours and accessible to you. Whitewind is a blogging platform or a Substack kind of substitute that uses that same protocol. What that means is that you could write a blog post and then post about it on Blue Sky, and Blue Sky becomes your comment string for those blog posts. At least that's how I understand this, which is nifty because you suddenly harnessed a new Twitter-like platform that does threading reasonably well, kind of well, and you've connected it to posts that are meant to be like written articles that would be like a Substack article or one of my markdown files on GitHub. And I did a post about how I'm cross-posting in a very clumsy way. I'm writing originally, as I just said, in markdown on GitHub, and then I'm putting that on Substack, I'm putting that on LinkedIn, I'm putting that on Medium, and then I'm linking all those things in my brain, and I'm putting at the footer of each of those kind of links to links to each other. So this made me think, oh, good, I should just add Whitewind as yet a fifth place where I'm going to cross-post, but then use that as the comment stream for the kind of the heart of how do I build discussion and community and aliveness around the evolving nuggets that compose any NeoBook mycelial structure. That may have been too weird a description, but I'm trying to figure out a simple way to bring aliveness into the NeoBooks process in a way that I think would make all of us happy, because NeoBooks aren't meant to be books, they're meant to be a rethink of how books and ideas work in the world. And a key part of that rethink is, hey, these things need to be alive and in community. I can explain any part of that if somebody asks me questions.
Jerry, not necessarily a question to explain, but how do you see that enablement, technological enablement of community connecting with our work here?
Well, so I think NeoBooks are meant to be about these living nuggets. And it's, to me, making the nuggets live is central to our NeoBooks work here. And if we adopted this particular approach for it, that might let that come true. Totally open to other approaches to doing the same thing. But I think conversations around ideas so that we can elaborate them, build scaffolding, show our reasoning, show our work, work in public, all those kinds of things, I think are central to what we're talking about.
So your target audience, are those the symbolic capitalists?
Sorry, I was just getting a call.
I was asking the question, who is the target audience, Jerry? Are those the symbolic capitalists?
So one of the questions that I want to ponder out loud and haven't had the time for has to do with symbolic capitalists, or the phrase I heard earlier was performative progressives. And it was from a libertarian friend of mine, a conservative friend of mine, and he and I have been exchanging lots and lots of emails for the last couple of years since we met. And he said, look, the problem with Democrats is that they go join a protest, then nothing happens. Then they join the next protest, then nothing happens. Then they join another protest. And the phrase for that is performative progressives. There's another phrase, elite overproduction, which came out of diagnostics about how the left screwed up, how Democrats screwed up. And now we have symbolic capitalism. I think these things are all related. And I'm very interested in how they work, how true they are, and how much they might be taking us in the wrong direction. Because once I heard the performative progressives critique, I put a thought in my brain that I haven't been able to go back to or do much with, which is, how do we tell the difference between insincerity and ineffectiveness? Meaning, a whole bunch of people join Black Lives Matter protests because they actually think that there is systemic racism and they care a lot about it and they wanted to go out and do something. But the nearest thing to do, especially in the middle of a pandemic, was to go scream and shout and march around for a while, which turned out to be completely ineffectual, did nothing. There is nothing has been improved for Black lives as a result of the BLM protests, other than this incredible backlash, right? So if anything, it was maybe even negative to do. But I think that means that people were sincere but ineffectual, not just insincere, which is the performative progressive critique. And I could be entirely wrong, and I've gone a little too deep in the issue. But I just did that because I think it's a really good example of how living nuggets of insight in a NeoBook environment might actually help us think these things through together. Did that make sense to anybody? Bueller?
Yeah, I think it would still help to define a target audience, at least sort of in broad terms. Now here it's sort of defined as general population, but there are just so many opportunities right now to engage, right? I don't know if you have seen the Hartman report that just came out. That just came out today, because there is this discussion right now. I mean, just as an example, right? The H-1B visas, right? So big conversation. So Hartman is taking this on by saying, we used to have incentive systems for students to aspire, during the Sputnik era, to aspire to learning math, to basically to learn STEM. And so the opportunity here right now is to explain if you guys are talking about the reformation of the American educational system and you complain about how shallow the American students are, why don't you incentivize students by saying if you go into STEM and you have a B grade average, we'll pay your college, things of that sort. So to alert, I mean, just to surface ideas like this, which are now starting to percolate on LinkedIn at least, and I'm not on any other network, but that would be a great topic for TikTok, for whatever other networks these guys, the kids are on. It's just to bring out ideas of what we could be doing if we really had good intentions to improve the system, so Hartman has been coming out pretty strong and very contemporary with his topics. So this article here is really quite good in outlining this thought. So that's what I was thinking. Is just if we could grab on a topic like this and then develop our thoughts on what policy could be, if and share ideas and spread them, but they have to get outside the sorry for the symbolic capitalism thing here, but they have to reach across the aisle, right? I mean, they have to make it across. So they have to be framed in ways that are empathic and supportive and constructive and so what do you think about that?
I'm like this for the have to reach across part of it there, class, because I think it's and coming from an Australian perspective to here, I understand that a lot of the concern of the group is around you really divided political situation in the States and how that plays out, and then that has a reverberation across to where I am, and there's a range of other polarizations right across the world at the moment, and we're looking into January. It's going to be it's quite you know more than most how concerning it is looking into January. So I've got a cat here who's wants to be part of the conversation. So why multi-species? Why can't cats be part of the conversation, right? It seems that one of the things that we're seeking to do with NeoBooks is to create something that stands almost outside bias that can be picked up by somebody who has any of those various perspectives and go, well, this is a tangible piece of information that I would like to interpret, use, grab hold of. And it might be that it actually it might be able to move across all of those sides and actually create something that's a bit more harmonious, just to be a little bit Age of Aquarius about it. It means that but I think they're also the big, are we working something into our DNA, or are we looking at an end state? Because or both. If we're looking at our DNA, we need to just very slowly take our time to explore that, which is what we're doing. If we look at the end state, then we might say it might just be good just to get going and get something happening, and then trial it, test it, give it a go. Jerry, if it's looking at a new way of experimenting a little bit, trying one of those things and coming back. Jose, if it is looking at taking one of the elements of this and then combining it together, look, so there's something a bit tangible, and then going, well, what happened when we did that? I know I learned a lot when I brought my version of a NeoBook in, and I went, oh, okay, this is what I had to go at. And the conversation was so enlightening. I went away and I have a much more mature idea of some sort of what a NeoBook could be, and still only this big. So that experimentation part of it seems to be something that gives it it's a bit scary, it takes us out of our intellect, because then we put something out. I think, Jerry, what you're saying is that the it's very hard for people to engage in what we've got going, and that's a blocker. And that means that that's been an experiment, and that's what you've found from this experiment, is that you've got people who've been able to make it through the mesh of that, and like we are here, and able to sort of get through and then go, okay, I want to have something to say in this space, or I want to learn from this space, but it's keeping people out, which seems to be the antithesis of what we're actually trying to do. So that's a good learning if that's the case. I'm keen to hear what's, Stacey, what you're making of all of this.
Well, one, I want to say to Klaus's point, I continue to think that food is the right starting point that can bridge that gap between the different groups, because no matter who I'm speaking to, everybody wants healthy food. And regardless of who they're blaming for the fact that it's not healthy, at least they still want healthy food. I would, at this point in my personal discussions, I'm moving towards housing, because I'm watching, and other people we're seeing these ads for these companies buying up homes. And anybody, even like just looking up, if you just ask the question, why are these companies buying up all the homes? It gets people thinking, what is happening? Where are we going to live? But that wasn't your question. Your question was, what I'm thinking is what I'm always, well, first of all, understand it took me 2 years to figure out that protocols means directions. So I'm still trying to figure out, like what we're doing here. I'm always trying to figure out, how do we weave the social components into everything we do? Because I feel it gets left out almost all the time, constantly being left out. I tried to do that a little bit when I brought in my storytelling. The purpose of that was to have an activity that somebody might be able to come in on, where it starts like a fantasy and just a social thing, but then somebody is interested in sound. And the experts come in and they talk about sound, and that might lead to a band or a concert or a hearing, something happening, who knows where it's going to lead. But just as like this beginning point that starts from a social place, because it seems that what I see happening is people do things and they want to go out and build relationships. And I don't see that as working, because underneath there's always some sort of an agenda. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing or it's evil. It's just the way it is. And so when you have an agenda to build relationships, that's going to be tarnished. But when you're already in relationships with people and then you do something, it's a completely different outcome. So that's what I think.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Other thoughts? What does that mean for where we are? And what we'd like to do next, how we'd like to structure that?
Jose, what do you think?
Well, when I hear what both Klaus and Stacey said, for me, the question of who's the audience, who's the audience of what we project would be NeoBooks' audience. And that's sort of, to me, that's like asking who's the audience of a book, right? Of a book, not the book, but all books. And it's basically everybody is the audience of a book. A specific book, pretty much everybody on earth has read a book by now.
But they still have target audiences. I
No,
mean,
each book.
sci-fi or a crime story or science.
Sure, absolutely. Each book has. But what I think we're doing here is creating a new kind of book not creating necessarily only a genre of a new kind of book. In other words, it isn't a crime story or all fiction or all nonfiction. It's open to anybody to write whatever they would want to write. We're inventing, from my perspective again, we're inventing a new medium. It so happens that that new medium can then have any type of book in it, right? Topic, content. And so for me, the first question isn't so much who the audience is, because I think the audience is specific to what the content's going to be. I think it's more of who's going to be able to write in this, who's going to be able to contribute to this. And I think writers, people who are writing books, people who have ideas, people who would like to do it differently, that's our audience, if you want to call it that. It's individuals who may already have written something or want to write something, but that feel like the book is not their medium for them. It's just not enough. That they could do more with this new medium, that this new medium could allow them to explore different things, give their readers a different way of communicating with it and being different. So that to me is a little different spin on Klaus's question, but I think if I had to answer it, would be that. And then I love Stacy's point, which is if there's already a community of authors, a community of people who are already thinking different, who are already trying to do something unique, that maybe that's who we're trying to appeal to. Folks that, given the opportunity to understand what a NeoBook might be, would say, oh, do you have that technology? I'd want to use it tomorrow. If you had it, I want to use it tomorrow. And to me, that would be that community would be both in part an answer to Klaus, but also I think to Stacy's very powerful point, that it's about that community feeling like they can accomplish what they want to accomplish rather than us making something up.
Pretty soon, everybody's going to have their hand up.
Oh, hold on, let me raise my hand.
Yeah. Stacy, please.
Yeah, well, what Judge Jose just got to, I was going to say, what is it that you guys want? Because I think you're the target audience. And if each one of you said, this is what I wish, that's the way to approach it.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Love that, Stacy. Klaus?
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
so maybe I like specificity, I like to put a little tighter frame around it. And for example, what I just posted here, giving the social media environment's propensity to amplify division, deliberate strategies are needed to counter these trends. So if one of our protocols was to write in ways that that cuts across a broader spectrum, right? That cuts that. So I mean, great example is this educational thing, or what I just wrote about for agriculture. What is regenerative agriculture? It cuts across the entire spectrum, no matter where people stand. Everyone wants to have their kids educated. Everybody likes the idea that if you work hard, you may get a free college education out of it. So they are ideas, that resonate constructively, positively in every camp, and take the negativity out. So if we say this is one of our principles, then the way we write has to conform to that. No, it has it sets a standard in how we would express ourselves and how we would approach a specific topic. So it can be quite generic in no matter what you're writing about. But the idea is to cut across into a broader audience that is not that is currently quite alienated, and that alienation is causing so many issues in our society.
Jax, you had your hand up earlier. Did you
Uh,
still want
Look, mostly I was Stacey pretty much I think nailed it in that way, because in what I think at the moment, just if we took we have class, you're the one with the book out there on your website. Yeah. Jerry, you're actively having these conversations, and you've got your work out in the external field as well. And we've got the OGM website and NeoBooks, so that's accessible publicly.
to?
Jose, you've got R Radical. I got it right?
Radical, yeah.
Radical. Yeah, Radical Art, that's it. And you're looking a lot at the processes of what we're doing here. I think this is what's happening. And other people, we've got Rick and we've got others who join the group from time to time too, who have outputs of some sort or some kind of writing. The current state, it seems to me, and Stacey, I'm not sure, I don't know you well enough to know what
I'm
you're
here to play. I'm here to play.
Okay, cool. That's sort of me too in many ways. If we took what we've currently got in terms of output, our current audience is exactly whoever is picking up those and reading those. And our individual work and where it looks collective, where it's part of NeoBooks, or where we say this is a NeoBook, or we identify it, that's where we are right now. And I don't know the reach that your audiences have. The only bit I know at the moment is that our audience is the one thing I can be sure about is that we are our audience. And so Stacey, when you said that, because we are that audience at the moment, working through what a NeoBook is, trying to understand it, looking at what the communities are that we're identifying are important, where we want to, what subject matter, whether it's housing, whether it's food, whether it's soil, whether we're looking at what medium we're using. We're the audience for it currently. And it's kind of important to know where we are. And I think that's going back to the Snowden work. What's our current state? And our current internal state is that we are that audience, and we've got desires about changing and shaping the future world that we see emerging, and shaping the way that people interact in terms of their political narratives and motivations to vote or not. And then the other part of it, we've got this technology which is changing and shaping our ways, being mostly that we've got the AI pressure, the fact that people are reading less, they're engaging at a lower level, their ability to understand and unpack information is thwarted by social media and the rest of it. So we're kind of grappling with that part too. And so, which means we've got a bit of a soup when we arrive together each time. And it's kind of interesting and fun because it actually does let things bubble up. And I know, Jerry, you're a master at this, with your facilitation at letting this go along. It also has the other impact that it could end up being a bit frustrating and exclusive for people who might have something to add if we can't get our hooks in. So anyway, it's just what I think our current state is, and yeah, these questions, the conversation we're having today, really important, and at some point important for us to kind of go, which part do we want to tackle, and then give it a go. And I'm happy to support anything really with that, as long as we are able, to do it. I have a big agenda actually with this, because it's a learning process for me, and I'm really interested in what comes out of our I think that we have the ability here to actually influence the way that living knowledge is distributed over a long period of time. So that's probably my agenda, is contributing to that.
So what does, I love our conversation here. What does it mean for us structuring our next call in a week? Oh, right.
I think we need to maybe have some other structure that allows folks who want to talk about the technical protocols of how this might get done. And maybe I'm just making an assumption here, but maybe it's just Marc-Antoine and I. I don't know who else is interested in that, but I know he is, and I know I am.
Well, Pete and I have been in various ways also over time.
And have that conversation separate from the content conversation, separate from the because I think it's frustrating for parties to be trying to have a conversation about the impact of a NeoBook and the power of a NeoBook when others are trying to have conversations about, well, what's a nugget? How does a nugget work? What does the nugget, how does it interact with X, Y, or Z? Those kinds of things, because they're proto to a NeoBook, right? They exist, they have to exist before a NeoBook exists, at least the way I'm seeing it. And so if we're going to build some kind of platform that allows for NeoBooks to exist, that is interoperable, then it needs to have a structure. And it can't be so loose that anybody can write anything at any time and not be able to interact with it, right? It's not interactional. It's just, I wrote something, I call it a NeoBook, and it's a NeoBook because we called it a NeoBook, but is it giving us all of the, at least in my mind, all of the features that a living knowledge base would have to support moving this forward so that we can all share in the conversation?
I might have, if I might just have a response to that, Jose, thank you. Brings to mind two things. One is I'm not so fond of the idea of separating into silos of a technical group and a non-technical group. I think that the benefit is actually in the cross conversation. It's just that frustrations are always about a mismatch of expectations, and then so I think that if we look to solve the frustration factor over the going to break up into different groups, it might be that actually we work closer at actually having this conversation today is more about us looking at our technical platform, and let's just talk about the technical platform. So when we go too wide, let's get back to the technical platform discussion and let's stick in that arena today, and then for this half hour and for the next, sort of so that people can choose in and out maybe. And I don't know, but it might, I think the thing that we're also trying to attempt is, so I think this is really important work, right? And when you have important work and you're thinking about it being built from the DNA, you need a diversity of voices. And the platform will dictate the way that it's used, in which case you actually need to have people involved right down at the very beginning who are non-technical, and I bridge both, I sit in both. It's that I think with this group, what we're doing is managing the expectations when we come in, and we've got I've drawn down here yeah, the range. It never works very well, does it? This is a range of what we're doing here. I'll take a photo and put it in Mattermost with better handwriting. It's that we cycle around all of those areas, and we all have say our little bit and go on to the next bit, and it means that we doing this swirling, and we haven't slowed down enough to go deep into any of those. So we swirl, and yeah, that's an observation. Yeah.
Thanks. There's a useful tool called polarity management. There's actually a book by that title, which has a figure 8, basically is its idea. And it says, it's kind of a management book. And it says, in lots of cases, you see a dilemma and it looks like it's either this or that. Either we talk tech or either we talk content. And polarity management says, hey, these are just poles to negotiate. So what we could do is say, hey, every other call, or this time we're going to go deeper into tech. And that means that the people who know that it's not going to be a content call, maybe they don't show up, but maybe they switch their brains into, oh, I'm going to get a little PhD course in the tech side of it right now. And then we swing back and do the other side. And then the content people are like, oh, but the thing we're building won't support the thing we're talking about over in the content side. And we can learn both ways. But polarity management just says, hey, let's just make explicit which part of this little infinity diagram we're on. And in that way, we can keep everybody on track without separating ourselves into two different communities that might get easily out of sync and start doing some other kinds of stuff. We're also in waters that in some cases are technically deep enough that I don't know what's being said sometimes. And so I think that we have to watch our depth somehow so that we can try to keep things accessible. And if a couple people have something deeply technical, maybe they go have a one-on-one call, solve it, and come back and explain it in Muggle terms to this call. But like that.
I like
that. What was that, Klaus? Sorry.
I like muggles. I'm a muggle, you know.
We all know muggles.
Muggle power, man.
Muggle power. We're pretty smart muggles, right? It's okay. Yeah. So do we think, do we have enough clarity for when we come back? Because we're at time. I think, are we at time or we've got more?
We're at time, yeah.
Yeah. When do you think we have enough clarity when we come back to pick it up next week?
What do you all think?
You know, I mean, I'm open to do anything that the group decides wanting to do. You know, I mean, we talked previously about having like a collection of NeoBooks under one side, right? And publish this under OGM. I mean, there are all sorts of things that we could be doing. And I don't mind to be framing what I've written in order to match a different publishing style, or if that's what it is, I mean, you know, just let me know what you want to do.
I really
Is there
like
any
the idea.
instructions?
I really like the idea of flowing in and out, and I wonder if it's more than 2. I wonder if there's actually 3.
Oh, you know about the 3-body problem.
If we're thinking about a technology, a platform, meaning the books as a platform, NeoBooks as a platform, and then content that I think the underlying technology and the platform itself are 2 separate things. What does a platform look like? What does it feel like? What does it want to be? And what, you know, what are the technologies underneath it that would provide for that?
So wait,
And
it's content technology and
content.
content technology, and the third is
Oh, platform. Sorry.
platform. Okay. Well, I think of platform as technology, so maybe I'm conflating.
Yeah, I'm thinking of the platform as a UX rather than the underlying protocols.
Okay.
because I think what Klaus is describing is a UX of what does it feel like to have NeoBooks in an environment that we could interact with. What would that look like? And I think we can actually mock that up without having built necessarily the underlying protocols that make that possible at scale. And we could, I think, have a week where we talk about that. And we could talk about different projects and content and so forth to get people's juices going and to understand how that might interplay with that. And understanding those two things, both how the content might work and the UX might work, that we would then have a better understanding of what the technological requirements are.
Part of the reason I mentioned the at proto thing earlier, the slightly technical digression, was that there are very likely some protocols out there that we can just borrow and adopt that will give us some of the functionality we're looking for. And there's tools being built around those, many of which are open source. So there's good news on that front.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I'm less
Okay.
optimistic, but
Yeah.
I think that things are happening in that direction. So one way or another, I think it's helpful. It may not be the solution.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
As we close, I just want to not lose the bit that Stacey was talking about with, I think it was the social emotional storytelling part of it. And that may, just because I think it's important not to lose it, Stacey, it needs to come back. So that as we go into the content, the platform discussion and those sorts, that we're able to look at how we might find ways to bring in emotional level, not just the word level. And yeah, like I'm using my hands at the moment. So just a way of thinking. I don't know how that will go, but I just want to not lose that as we go. Thank you.
Sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
Great meeting, everyone.
Are we good for this week? See you next year.
Happy
just,
New Year.
Just got a fresh baked cookie from my wife.
Oh,
Sweet.
So good.
Thanks, Klaus.
Sweet.
That's really nice of you.
Yeah. Can I have one too? Thanks.
I've got one.
Happy New
you all.
Year.
Happy New
Happy
Year.
New Year, everybody. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.